AITA for regretting uniting my husband with his parents and son from his late wife?
I, 33-year-old female, married my Indian boyfriend, Anand, 38-year-old male, 3 years ago. We got married without informing my husband's parents because they were against this marriage, as it was interreligious. However, we agreed to inform his parents about the marriage after having a baby, which we had after 1 year of the wedding. After the baby, Oliver, was born, I asked my husband to introduce me to his parents, but he was hesitant. When I continuously insisted, he told me that he had already informed his parents about the marriage, and they were not ready to accept it under any circumstances. However, I continued asking him, and finally he agreed, and we visited them. During our visit, they pretended that their minds had changed and welcomed us. At that time, they were living in Texas, but later they moved to New York and started living near our apartment. Initially, everything was going well, but things started to sour, and now we are on the verge of divorce. Background: I met him during our university years when I was pursuing my master's degree, and he was beginning his PhD at Columbia University. He had moved to the USA from India with his family 6 years earlier. He was living alone in New York while his family and his uncle's families managed their businesses in Texas. He had been married before, but his wife Shrishti died in a car accident. He had a son named Vikas from his late wife. He told me all this before proposing to me, and I think his honesty was what brought me closer to him. Over time, we fell deeply in love, and after some time, we decided to get married. I introduced him to my family, but he was reluctant to introduce me to his. When I asked why he was hesitant, he told me that his conservative parents would not accept our relationship easily because of my religion. I belong to a Christian family, though we are not practicing, and my husband belongs to a conservative Hindu family. However, he assured me that he would convince his parents and asked me not to worry about it. After a week, my boyfriend told me that his parents were not ready to give their permission for this union, but he reassured me that he loved me and would marry me at any cost. After many failed attempts to reconcile with his parents, we decided to get married without their permission and without informing them, and we agreed not to reveal the marriage to his parents for a year, or until we had a baby. We proceeded with our plan and had a small wedding ceremony, attended only by my family members and a few of his friends. Following the marriage, we, as a couple, moved to a rented duplex and began living there. After our wedding, my husband visited his parents only once, and he was out of contact with them, but he told me that he was in. After about a year, we had a baby boy, Oliver. After his birth one day, I asked my husband if it was time to meet his family. He replied with a disappointed face, "Let's see when we can visit." From that day on, whenever I brought up the topic of meeting his family, he would change the subject or brush it off. One day, I discovered an old photo album in my husband's drawer, filled with pictures of his family, parents, ex-wife, and his son. While I had seen some individual pictures of his family members before, I couldn't figure out the nature of his relationship with them. These pictures revealed a new perspective. All his family members had genuine smiles on their faces. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized how much my husband had sacrificed for our relationship. In the evening, I told him about the pictures and asked, "Why haven't you told your family about our marriage and introduced me to them? They must be missing you." My husband went silent for a while, and then reluctantly told me that he had already informed them, and instead of accepting it, they disowned him, refusing to accept an interreligious marriage at any cost. He felt there was no benefit in visiting them as it would be futile. After listening to my husband, my heart shattered, and at the same time, I confronted him for not telling me all this. I told him that I had taken him away from his family, but I wanted to rectify things by meeting his parents and by becoming a part of his son's life, and giving him a new mother, though a stepmother. Initially, my husband was hesitant to introduce me to his family, but when I continuously insisted, he agreed. One day we drove to his parents' house without informing them. After seeing us, his parents were shocked, and tears flowed down their cheeks as they hugged him tightly. They had been missing him, and their anger and disapproval had been replaced by sorrow and disappointment. Though hesitantly, they welcomed me too. My husband had a long conversation with his parents, and we also met his son. He was a silent boy with his father's smile and appearance. I even felt like calling him Anand Jr. We spent hours together playing board games, and I promised him that I would be his best stepmother. Over time, our visits became regular, and after around a year, my in-laws relocated to New York to expand their business there, and they started living next to our apartment. Though everything was okay in the beginning, my stepson started turning against me and my little son as he grew. Perhaps he wanted undivided attention. One day, he punched Oliver in the face because my son had taken his pencil box. I reprimanded my stepson for assaulting a child, but he retaliated and even used offensive language towards me, calling me a bitch. In the evening, I told my husband what had happened, but he said that they were both children and I should ignore such small things. For me, it was not a small thing. However, I ignored it. Today, I overheard my stepson telling his friend that my son Oliver was an out-of-wedlock child and the result of incest because he looks like my brother, Alex. I was shocked to hear this, as a 12-year-old boy should not talk this way. I doubted that he had overheard someone, my husband's parents perhaps, talking all this nonsense. I was so pissed off, but I didn't say anything to my stepson and retreated to my room. In the evening, I confronted my husband and told him what my stepson was saying about our son. He said that I was being petty and claimed that I might have heard wrong. It was not a trivial thing, because my stepson had accused me of incest and had questioned the paternity of my son. It was not something that I could ignore. He said, his son is also a kid, just 10 years old. How can he say all this? I told him that I didn't mean that this was his brainchild. Before I could end, he interrupted and asked, "Whose brainchild is it? What do you want to say?" "Your parents," I said, and told him clearly that I suspected his parents were still against me and wanted us to separate. After listening to this, his face turned red with anger, and he said, "I don't want to listen to a word against my parents and son," and told me that if I were not happy with them, I could proceed with a divorce, and he left the room without listening to me. It was shocking for me because it was the first time my husband behaved this way. Otherwise, he is a cool and calm person. When I came out of my room after almost an hour of that argument, I saw my husband was sitting in the yard of his parents' home, talking to them and enjoying some snacks. His son Vikas was playing with his cat nearby. They seemed to be a complete family, and there was no space where I could fit in. I felt like an outsider, an alien. Disappointed, I retreated to my room. It was the first time my husband behaved this way, and I am convinced that my husband's parents are behind it. I have also realized that it is my bad that I reunited him with his parents and son. If I hadn't, I would not be experiencing this situation. I regret reuniting him with his parents. So, AITA for regretting?